Good evening and welcome. This is the Thompson Board of Finance budget presentation public hearing. My cell phone says it's 7 p.m., so we'll call this meeting to order. And the record will show that all 6 members of the Board of Finance are present. So this evening, we will welcome the First Selectman, as well as the Superintendent of Schools and the Chair of the Board of Education, to present their respective proposed budgets to us, the Board of Finance, as well as to the citizens of Thompson. So I'm looking at the agenda here, and it says that the first presentation will be by the Board of Education. You're okay with that? So that'd be Melinda Smith, Superintendent of Schools, and Kathleen Herbert, Chair of the Board of Education, and I'll turn it over to you. Welcome.
Thank you. Good evening, members of the Board of Finance, members of the Board of Selectmen, Kenny, my fellow members of the Board of Education, citizens of Thompson, thank you for coming out this evening. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Kathleen Herbert, Chair of the Board of Education, and tonight, in collaboration with Superintendent Melinda Smith, I am going to present the Board of Education FY24 budget. Slide number 1. This lists the members of the Board of Education. Together, we reviewed and approved the budget, which will be presented to you tonight. It represents a fair budget that meets the duties of the Boards of Education as set out by the Connecticut Regulations, Section 10-220. Slide number 2. The duties of the Board of Education, Connecticut Section 10-220. Thompson Board of Education members shall provide an appropriate learning environment for all the students, which includes adequate instructional books, supplies, material, equipment, staffing, facilities, and technology. Over the years, due to cuts to the requested Board of Education budgets, we have not been able to meet these needs. Second, equitable allocation of resources among its schools. Special education needs have been allocated a large share of limited resources due to unfunded mandates by federal and state mandates, limiting resources available to general education. 3, proper maintenance of facilities. This has been an ongoing issue. Our facility is aging. Systems and infrastructure are becoming worn and breaking down. They need replacement or updating. Some of these areas are over 60 years old. A safe school setting. To me, a safe setting means not only physical safety, but social, emotional safety as well. Since the pandemic, social, emotional problems for students has increased to almost crisis levels nationwide and also here in Thompson. During the pandemic and through this year, Thompson has had grant money to put programs and personnel in place to help deal with these issues, but those grants have expired. But the problems still exist and in fact are escalating. Programs and personnel are still required. I will let Superintendent Smith speak to these issues in depth later in the presentation. we as a board feel that this budget meets our responsibilities as set forth in the regulations at the bare minimum. I ask the Board of Finance to pay particular attention to slide number 12 and number 16 as Superintendent Smith reviews them. Slide number 4. This is our vision and our mission statement. If we as a town continue to underfund our schools, we continue to slip further and further away from our vision and mission statement. These will only become fully achievable if we adequately fund the school system to give every child a chance to reach their full potential. Slide number 5, administrative staff. I would like to acknowledge the hard work put in by the administrative staff in developing this FY24 budget. They did an excellent job in balancing the needs of the students with the needs of the community. This budget meets the basic needs to operate an adequate instructional base for all our students in a safe and a secure environment. Lastly, before I turn the rest of the presentation over to Superintendent Smith, I would like to say there comes a time when we as a town need to recognize that we can no longer cut the school's funding without hurting our town's integrity. When you impact the school's operating ability, you are no longer hurting the well-being, education, and environment of our students, but you are hurting the well-being of the town also. A poor rating of a school impacts the town by lowering housing values and discouraging businesses from moving into town, putting more of the tax burden onto homeowners. An investment in your school is an investment in your town and yourselves. So take pride in your school and your town. Invest in your town and yourselves. I fervently urge, as others have, that the Board of Finance offer the budget as presented to the voters and let them decide. I will now turn the rest of the presentation over to Superintendent Smith, who will take you through the details of the Board of Education's FY24 budget. Thank you. I'll go down that way.
Good evening, everyone. So the next slide is very important to our town, or to your town. It's the portrait of a graduate. And the portrait of a graduate, as everyone remembers, is that it was developed by over 500 stakeholders, many of you who participated, members of the Board of Finance, putting the vision together of our portrait of a graduate. And so we had not only town leaders, many citizens, other stakeholder groups involved in putting this vision for our graduates together. And so together we know that a Thompson graduate will be independent, will be knowledgeable, and will be community connected. Next slide. So under those pillars, the members of the community put together attributes that they would like to see our students graduate with. And they identified those attributes. They are all the foundation of our curriculum. Our curriculum is in the revision process, preschool through grade 12, and we are weaving in how to address all of those attributes by the time a student leaves Turtle Lot Memorial High School. The people of Thompson voiced their vision of a Thompson graduate, and now it's time to invest in that vision. Vision plus investment will yield a very successful school system. Next slide, please. So we know that Thompson Public Schools are a town-wide asset. Thriving schools obviously means thriving property values. Chairman Herbert just spoke about that. Thompson Public Schools, by the way, is the largest employer in town. The slide says 71, but as of today, 72 employees live in Thompson, about a third of our staff. They are a community resource and revenue to local businesses. Let's face it, folks, there's not a whole lot going on in Thompson outside of the activities that happen on this campus. And so the athletic programs, community service projects, art, music, theater, extracurricular activities, and PTO-sponsored events all help make the town vibrant. Next slide, please. We're very proud of the work that's been happening between the town and the Board of Education. We've been working together to address efficiencies. As you all know, we have a shared finance director, and from my perspective, it was the best move we ever did. The vision that our current finance director has, completely understanding the town budget and the Board of Ed budget, has been really valuable, especially putting this budget together. We share a human resource director. We share technology services. We share municipal and personnel services whenever we can, either through the Department of Public Works, the Recreation Department, through our custodial team and security. We are working on combining service contracts, all to address efficiencies and, at the end of the day, save money to the taxpayers. At this time, I would publicly like to thank First Selectman Amy Sainange for her ongoing support and her ongoing vision to see us as a whole town, the board and the town working together. Next slide. So the district has, we have several budget drivers that is impacting the final number here. So I'm going to go through each of those and give you a little bit of detail behind those numbers. First of all, increased costs in special education. This is my sixth budget that I'm presenting to the town. And when I first started, just in out-of-district placements, those are students that cannot come to school here in Thompson Public Schools because they have needs that we can't meet here. At that time, we had about 14 or 15 students attending out-of-districts. And we're fluctuating this year between 24 and 27. And so out-of-district costs have escalated. To get those students to those out-of-district placements, we need to provide transportation. We've done a good job really controlling the number of buses on the road. However, that costs have increased depending on where the students have to go to school. And then, of course, in-district contracted service. So if we have a student who has a certain individual education plan and requires special resources, we provide those services on site. Sometimes we have to contract with outside experts to come in to support a student in the general education classroom. That is more cost-effective and actually better for the student to remain in their classroom with that additional support. But even those fees have gone up. We're hitting a funding cliff this year. Kathleen Herbert talked about, we've been fortunate over the last few years to be relying on grant funding from the federal government to support some of the necessary programs and personnel that we've needed. And so we used our ESSER $2 and our OP funds, and we stretched that over 3 years. But at the end of this fiscal year, all of that money has been expended. And so we're hitting a funding cliff. We need to maintain the social worker at the high school. We need to maintain a grade 6 teacher. We have a mathematics curriculum leader who's doing outstanding work to support the district improve mathematics scores overall. Unfortunately, Thompson has been designated as an opportunity district, and we are being closely monitored by the state. The state is requiring us to put these additional supports in place to help our students grow. And then finally, a library circulation specialist who is stretched thin, but she works at the middle school and the elementary school, and that's primarily so students can circulate books. Next slide, please. So we've also included in this budget 2 critical positions. The first one being a student behavior coordinator at the high school. Now, if you recall, about 3 years ago, the budget started to be reduced, and we had to make internal cuts. And so to not impact students directly, we looked at the administrative team, and we reduced a curriculum director, we reduced and eliminated the assistant principal at Mary R. Fisher, and then also at the high school. What's happening now is that our building principal is spending most of his day addressing behavior concerns. This year alone, we've had over 51 suspensions, multiple calls to law enforcement, and multiple calls for ambulance services for students in distress. And so we are hoping to put a student behavior coordinator on site so that we can maintain students and appropriately support them within the school day and not have to suspend them, and also to provide more opportunities to work with the families to help remediate some of those behaviors that we're seeing escalating, and more so since the pandemic. Secondly, a math interventionist at Thompson Middle School. Our mathematics scores need to improve. We need to provide students with more opportunities to engage with direct instruction. A math interventionist will provide small group instruction for students who have delays in mathematics. Now, our fuel and electricity costs have gone up, but we have locked in for those rates. So that number that you see, $108,500, is actually the actual cost of what it's going to cost us as an increase for fuel and electricity. Inflation costs on most goods and services and supplies. I'm just going to give you one indication. A case of toilet paper used to cost us $26 last year. This year it is now costing $46. That's happening with all of our consumable materials, and it's impacting everything we're purchasing. And then, of course, there's the salary increases per our contract obligations. Fixed costs that have already been determined through negotiations. Next slide, please. So we want to take a look at inflation and our budget history. Most of the years that a budget has been put together since 2018, the budget hasn't kept up with inflation, and it has never covered our fixed costs. So what ends up happening is early in the school year, we freeze the budget, we don't allow teachers to purchase the curriculum materials that they need, or the floor machine that's desperately needed for our custodial team, and we transfer those dollars to cover those costs that weren't covered when the budget passed. And if you can look at the rate of inflation and the rate that, the percent change that we did get for an increase, you can see that we, for the most part, have not even touched that. So the result has been, since I've been here, I've had to reduce staff, needed staff, I've eliminated programs, and we have certainly postponed capital projects overall. Next slide. To just take a look at where the dollars go in our budget, and just to go back, our increase is a 9.55% increase ask, or $1,888,300 over last year. So where do those dollars come from? Obviously, the bulk of it comes from the town allocation, which directly impacts the taxpayers. You can see there in the green. But we also get funding from the state. Educational course share, money comes in from the state of $534,704, which is 35% of the overall budget. And we also do get back some reimbursement for special education, about $400,000 every year. and that's about 2%. So 37% comes from other funding sources and 63% from the tax base. Next slide, please. Now, since I've come, we haven't had a fully funded budget here for the school department, and we've had to make some really critical decisions along the way. My tenure began with the budget of 2018, and you can see that every year that the ask for the Board of Ed has been reduced by the time the town approves the budget. So average yearly reduction to the Board of Ed budget has been about $384,000, and the total reduction over the past 8 years is over $3 million. Next slide, please. Please? Oh, I skipped the special ed one. Let's go back to that one because that's an important slide. So, as everybody knows, special education services are necessary to support students, and they are required. It's not nice to have, they're required by state and federal regulations. Programs have been developed as a cost avoidance, and there's two major programs that we brought into the district over the past few years. The most important one is the Bradley program. It's Bradley-Windham County program. That is a special education service program that comes into the district. They use our facility. They run the program independent of the Board of Ed budget. However, we get a significant reduction in tuition. We don't have to pay transportation fees. It's still considered an out-of-district placement because students are going to that particular institution. However, we're also bringing students in from out of district, which drives our costs down. So if you look at the left-hand side, you can see that without the Bradley School Windham County program, transportation would have cost over $1 million, and tuition would have cost over $3 million. However, because we have that program in place and on site, we have saved over $1.3 million, and that is a general cost avoidance across the top. We are tuitioning students in from other districts, and every time we bring a student in from other districts, that program brings a student in from other districts, we get a discount on our tuition. So this has been a win-win for the district and definitely a win-win on our budget. We've developed a transition program. It's 2 years old this year. And so if you look at one side, on the left-hand side, you can see what the cost would be, over $200,000 to run that program. But right now, we're running that program at about $80,000 because we have a skilled teacher, a paraprofessional, and Lowe's actually donated the entire upgrade to a classroom, which turned it into a studio apartment so students can learn life skills. It's a wonderful thing, and we're so proud that that program is up and running. Right now, we have about 2 or 3 students in that program, but over the course of the next few years, more and more students are going to need that program. Transition program is for students who are age 18 to 21. They have a certain criteria, and the Board of Ed must provide education for those students until their 22nd birthday. So that is an important slide, and thank you for calling that out. Okay, so can we go to my statement? So I'm going to read this to you because I think it's important for you to hear this from me. I've never put a statement in a budget before, but this is the year I really feel everyone needs to hear what I have to say. So dear Thompson citizens, the Thompson Public Schools FY24 budget adequately covers the expected cost of special education, fixed contract costs, necessary previously grant-funded positions, and increases of inflation on fuel, utilities, and general supplies. Historically, the BOE final town-approved budget has just not kept up with inflation, fixed contract obligations, and student need. The BOE annual budgets are prepared to cover and appropriately fund the school district. I always put in an appropriate budget, and unfortunately, what happens is because of the reductions, then programs and services suffer. All unexpected healthcare fees. After 6 years being in this district, managing a very challenging budget, none that have been fully funded, no other reductions, and I'm serious about this, no other reductions can be made. There is no more staff to cut. And so therefore, the FY24 BOE budget must be approved as presented to maintain the current services and the programs in place for students and to provide for those two much-needed positions. I urge the citizens of Thompson to push forward the total FY24 BOE budget as it stands, as the historic budget reductions have seriously had a negative impact on our students, faculty, and staff. And I can honestly say that I recommend this budget, and I know that our students will prosper and their outcomes will be met if this budget is put in place. So that's my statement about the budget, but let's talk about the highlights. So I'm going to go by each department quickly. At Turtle Lot Memorial High School, we have really old, damaged Spanish books that need to be upgraded for the Spanish students. So that is in the TMHS budget. NEASC accreditation is coming. Our first visit is going to be in the spring of '24. They do a 1 full day visit, and then they come back 2 years later in 2026 to review the suggestions they made in the spring of 2024. We have a report from 10 years ago, and we've been slowly addressing those issues, the track being one of them that was in the report. And so thank you to the citizens of Thompson for addressing that. But that is a serious review, and it is very important that we get a good accreditation. Maintaining the current staff at the school and the programs that are currently in place. We're expanding a culinary arts program. We've made a partnership with Day Kimball Hospital, and all of that is outside the BOE budget. We're using grant funding and community resources to expand some of our programs. The student behavior coordinator I spoke to you about. At Turtle Lot Memorial Middle School, we want to maintain our current staff and programs in place, but we do want to add that math interventionist because we know we have a significant need in mathematics. At Mary R. Fisher Elementary School, there are some mandated reading curriculum resources that we must purchase, but we also want to maintain the staff and the programs that are in place at that school. In special education, you know the drivers. Out-of-district tuition, out-of-district transportation, and contracted services is a big number. Health services, we want to maintain our health budget. District-wide, we want to add a little bit of contingency. In the budget overall, we've never had any money put aside for emergencies. So when we have a flood like we did 2 weeks ago in one of our science labs, there wasn't a nest egg put aside so that we could dip into that and fix the floor and fix the ceiling tiles. Certainly we have insurance, but we have a $10,000 deductible. So there is never any money aside if we have an emergency. And what happened in that classroom was actually a heating coil burst, and now we tried to fix the heating coil unit, but it failed, and so now we have to replace the whole unit. That's part of the whole HVAC assessment that was done, and we know that those units need to be replaced. And there's a potential of those things bursting because they're aging out. As far as a facilities plant, we have a playground at Mary R. Fisher that had to be closed down last spring. It needed upgrades and repairs, and to the tune of about $50,000. We were very lucky. We got a $10,000 grant from Verizon and a $350 grant from Walmart. And so in the budget is $40,000 for the remaining repairs to open that playground. Right now, the students at Mary R. Fisher outside of the early childhood classes do not have a playground to play on. And more importantly, the community uses that playground all the time, and the rec department uses it after school and in the summer. So it's been closed down since last April, and that does need to be repaired. Transportation, we just went out to bid for a new transportation contract, and the good news is that for FY24, the budget for that is flat, but then after that, the 4 subsequent years, the contract does go up by 5% each year. In athletics, we just want to maintain the sports programs that we have in place. We did add a bowling team this year, but we were able to manage that within the athletic budget, so that's fun. As far as technology, initially, when we closed down for COVID, we were not a one-to-one community, which meant every student didn't have access to a Chromebook or a laptop. We were able to do that with some of the federal dollars that we received, and so every student does have a Chromebook at the school or a laptop. But some of those are aging out, so in grades 5 and grades 8, we are on a cycle to replace those grade levels so that they go up to the high school or up to the middle school with a new device, and that travels with them for 4 years. Under curriculum, we just want to maintain professional development activities that are in place and the curriculum resources that are in place. So in closing, this budget was developed in a very thoughtful and data-driven way to provide Thompson students an educational program that align with the vision of the citizens of this town when they develop the portrait of the graduate. It is time to make an investment in the future and fully fund the BOE budget request. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathleen Herbert. Thank you, Melinda Smith. We'll move on to the next item of the agenda, which is budget presentation, public hearing. Amy Sainage, First Selectman, General Budget Capital Improvement Plan. Welcome, Amy.
Good evening, everyone. Oops, I almost knocked over the the podium. So, roughly 3 years ago, I wrote my very first Selectmen's Update. I wrote how I stood in the Public Works Department, specifically in the break room, astounded at the extent of disrepair. I further stated that this same level of disrepair characterized the entire town. Years of neglect left our town in need of a major revitalization, and I became committed to ensure that the neglect would end and a renewed sense of pride in all things Thompson would be ignited. This budget, presented by the Board of Selectmen tonight, reflects the desire to stop the neglect, invest in infrastructure, and build pride in this town that we all call home. I present to you the fiscal year 2024 proposed spending plan. Next slide, please. So this is just a quick overview. Currently projected town revenue is $2 million roughly. General town expenses will be $7.4 million. Capital requests that we've proposed are $1.3 million, or actually $1.4 million. And then debt service currently that the town owes is $1.3 million. So the amount left to be raised by taxation is $8.1 million. Next slide, please. So this next slide shows the drivers that are affecting the increase that we'll be seeing this year. The first line, you'll see capital improvements, and I'm going to go into greater detail on all of the capital improvement projects on the next slide. So the The rest of the lines, I'm going to kind of take line by line and kind of express to you what things were added to the budget this year. The first is the Public Works Department. You'll see we have a major emphasis on Public Works once again. It is our biggest department. Amidst a tough summer and fall, dead trees were falling into and across our roadways. So we have increased our request for tree work this year. A lot of the work that the town crew does, they only have a lift that goes so high, and they're also not experienced tree trimmers. So we do tend to outsource the majority of the larger trees that are dead and dying in town, and there are many. We expect this continued tree work to go on for several years. Fuel increases have spiked by 43%. Inflation has affected every supply line item within the Public Works Department. There are some heavy maintenance items that we've included in this year's budget, including the repair and replacement of the overhead doors within the Public Works garage. At the transfer station, the cost to dispose of solid waste and recyclables has risen, while the payment for recycling has decreased. So these increases are also reflected in this budget. Okay. The next line, you'll see a resident trooper. We did create an ad hoc committee that was discussing some of our options to increase security within not only the school but within the town. So the Board of Selectmen unanimously agreed to reinstate the resident trooper program this year. A resident trooper will benefit our town as a presence to monitor our streets for unlawful activity and also help to oversee the security at the school. The next line, you'll see salary and benefit increases. Those are bulked together. Our town employees will receive a 3% salary increase this year. Over the last 2 years, they've received 1.75. So we felt the need to raise their salary slightly to hopefully help them stay up with inflation. Health, vision, dental, and life insurance benefit costs have an estimated 12% increase at this time. We are awaiting those final figures. The next line, you'll see fire departments, an increase of $85,000. Part of this is the grants that we provide to the fire departments, an increase to those grants. It is also an increase to the hydrants, so that's a Connecticut water bill that we receive to cover the cost of hydrants in town. Additionally, the Board of Selectmen, we do continue to strive to ensure that our departments are adequately provided for. The board also increased a line item for physical fitness exams to ensure that our volunteers are healthy and able to enter any and all dangerous situations. Previously, this line item did not provide for physicals for all the eligible volunteers. During our budget workshops, we polled the fire chiefs to see how many staff or how many volunteers would be eligible for those physicals, and we've incorporated that number into this budget line. We've added a few new positions. The assistant recreation director is now a full-time position. We are allotting some money for an assistant finance director, which when we combined the finance director position, we knew that we would be adding that position sometime in the future. So we've allocated that. We also had to increase election workers at all the poll stations due to an SEEC filing that returned with a mandate for us to increase the number of poll workers at each station. So that is included in the new positions category as well. You've probably heard some talk about the Northeast District Department of Health. They did increase their fees to us by 50%. We are still, there are 6 towns roughly that are pressing Northeast District Department of Health to reduce their increase. Unfortunately, we are mandated to pay this because we did not withdraw from the Department of Health by January 1st. So this was quite a shock, but the impact is $35,000 to the town. The next line item is for our animal control officer. The animal control is a 24/7 position, and should be compensated for the hours that this individual works. We have increased this position to a 40-hour week. Our ACO, Janice Smith, works tirelessly to care for our four-legged animals in the community, but also take note that she does take calls for wildlife issues and also undertakes various investigations on an ongoing basis. And the last slide is just other miscellaneous increases, which might include about 20% for our electrical costs, 30% for our heating fuel. Yeah. So the proposed townwide increase is $1,451,000. Next slide. Okay, here is probably, it is the biggest portion of our increase, was within our capital improvement plan. So I'm just going to go line by line and explain the various items that are included in each of these items. The first is an increase in paving projects. Last year we were without a public works director. We have a brand new public works director who has a very aggressive plan. It's going to incorporate not only utilizing outside contractors, but doing some in-house paving as well. So just to give you an overview of what is proposed and what is planned that we hope to accomplish in this coming construction season. So in total, paving projects, the amount proposed is $578,000. This will include preventative maintenance on the most recently reclaimed and paved roads, to include, but not limited to, Brandy Hill Road, Red Bridge Road, West Thompson Road, and a few of the other smaller roads that have recently been done. So they will undergo a full chip sealing, and this helps to maintain the road for a longer period of time. If we don't chip seal roads, cracks get into the pavement, water gets into the cracks, and then when winter comes, there's frost, there's ice, it expands the cracks and leads to a quicker degradation of the pavement. We are planning full-depth reclamation and paving. This will be outsourced. 2.6 miles of Fabian Road from Red Bridge Road to Fabian Woodstock Road is planned, as well as some of the smaller roads that are literally crumbling, and these will include Plum Road, Park Street, Norman Hill Road, and Old Route 12. We realize they're smaller roads, but they are literally in a state of such disrepair you can barely call them a road. In-house paving will include Lowell Davis Road, Old Brandy Hill Road, Azid Road, 500 feet on Quadic Town Farm Road to include a major drainage repair, and then Indian Inn Road. Ongoing drainage work will also continue as we repair catch basins and culverts that have been collapsing in various parts of the town. So next, you'll see a 9-ton plow truck. This is the priority for the Public Works Department. The oldest in the fleet is from 1989. We also have a 1992 9-ton truck, a 1994. The majority of the fleet is 20 to 30 years old. And these trucks are pretty much worth their weight in scrap. The town misses out on trade-in value by waiting as long as we do to replace these vehicles. Additionally, the cost to repair grows exponentially as the fleet ages. Ideally, rotation and replacement of the fleet vehicles every 10 years is the ideal objective, and that is what we're shooting for. So the cost of the 9-ton plow truck included in this budget is $241,000. We are also requesting a loader for the transfer station as it's approaching its end of life. The cost for that loader is $217,000. The next item you'll see is the town garage roof. The Public Works garage has become a reactive repair. Leaks have been occurring for years. It is time to take the steps necessary to focus on a full replacement before the problem gets even worse. $100,000 has been appropriated in this budget to begin to prepare for the full replacement of the town garage roof. The town hall parking lot, repaving. Cracks and deterioration of the entire parking lot is leading to the need for a full-depth reclamation and paving. The cost is $73,000. The next item is something it's taken me 3 years to fully understand. It's called the MS4 federal mandate. It's mandated by the EPA and trickles down through Connecticut Department of Energy and Environmental Protection. And what this is, it references stormwater runoff. It's the oversight of all of the outfalls, all of the catch basins that dump into our waterways. This piece in the capital request is for construction to, over the next several years, because this will be ongoing, this isn't just a one-shot deal. Again, federally and state mandated, construction will be ongoing for the next several years to disconnect stormwater discharge into the waterways within town. So this year we have asked for $50,000. A lot of those projects will occur on Fabian Road. So and also Park Street. So we're being conscious about, while we're repairing certain roads, we're going to be able to check some of these items off of our MS4 list. And so that's for municipal stormwater. The next item is library community center maintenance. Their list is extensive, and I always like to give a shout out to Allison, our library director. She takes fine care of that facility, and it barely looks as old as it is, but it is 30 years old. So this year, some of the lists that they have for capital requests include a new phone system. Actually, they've had that, I think, for the last 3 years or more. The replacement of 2 air exchange units, the removal of the underground storage tank to be replaced with an above-ground oil tank. They've been undergoing a lighting project to improve the efficiency of the lighting within the library and community center itself. They've completed 1 phase. They have 2 more phases to go. And the total request that they have made is $50,000. The next line item is revaluation. As you know, state statute mandates that the towns reevaluate their properties every 5 years. It will be performed in-house this year. In fact, a lot of the work has already been performed by our assessor, Paul Hopkins. In the past, the town had contracted NECOG for the revaluation services at a cost of more than $150,000. We anticipate the cost being cut in half. The revaluation is due October 1st of 2024 and will affect the July 1, 2025 tax bills. We are requesting $25,000, which will help us meet the $75,000 we need to complete the revaluation. And then the last request is from the Little League. They have made a request to us to repair 3 town-owned fields at $11,000. We did receive 1 more request, which the Board of Selectmen denied putting into this budget at this time. And I like to point it out because it is a wonderful resource that we aren't able to utilize, and that's the Bull Hill Fields. If you remember, there's major drainage issues at the Bull Hill Fields. But someday we really hope that we can repair that and bring that back to life again, so that soccer tournaments can be held there and we can really make use of those fields. So in summary, how does the budget impact the taxpayer? And this is the budget for both the town and the school. The total amount to be raised by taxation is $22.5 million, which represents a mill rate of 29.2. This translates into a tax increase of $657 per year to the average Thompson homeowner. And that's all I have to present tonight. And I think the floor will probably be open to questions. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Amy Sanosh. Amy is correct. The next item on the agenda is questions and comments from the audience. So if there's anyone in the audience who has a question or a comment, they're welcome to come down here to the microphone and speak into the microphone so that everyone can hear, as well as people who are watching this on YouTube. I believe that's the way that we're broadcasting this, is through YouTube. But if you do have a question or a comment Could I ask, when you approach the microphone, that you state your name and address before you proceed with your question or comment? Any questions or comments at this time? Name and address, please.
My name is Kaylee Beck. I live at 685 Fabian Road. I would like to start off by saying that as a student at Turtelot, I would prefer if we didn't have a trooper in the school, especially if we were going to have the behavior coordinator there. I believe that if they're both there to deal with behavior issues, we should have one or the other. The trooper can deal with it in the legal way, and the behavior coordinator can, deal with it. But I would prefer one or the other to decrease the excess spending. I am happy to see some decreases in the school budget. But on the other hand, I'm very disappointed to see decreases in supply budgets at the Board of Finance meetings. I've made it very clear. Am I beeping?
No, that was someone's pager.
Okay. Very displeased to see the decreases in the supplies. I've made it very clear at the Board of Finance meetings that I wanted to see increases in supplies for the individual departments in the high school and other schools. And if at all possible, I would like those to be increased. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments from the audience? If that microphone is working, you're welcome to use that one. Name and address, please.
Danielle Carlson, 3 Rachel Drive, North Grosvenor-Dale, Connecticut. I was talking to somebody and I was just like, I feel like I'm Bill Murray in Groundhog Day. I'm back asking for our Board of Finance to not make any adjustments to the budgets that are presented to you. I am going to read from my phone, and public speaking is not my thing, so. As a taxpayer and a parent in Thompson, I'm asking that we put forth both budgets as is to referendum. These budgets were done and created with our taxpayers, town, and school systems well-being at hand. Our country has seen an inflation rate of over 6%. We've all experienced and seen this in the products that we use in our houses and the services we also use. This also means what it costs to run both our town and our school system has seen the same inflation rates. To not increase the budget to where it needs to be would be both disastrous and devastating to our townspeople. That would mean roads and bridges will continue to be neglected, important upgrades in our town not done, contractual obligations, not met, educational resources and staffing being cut. We are not the only town to face this similar situation. With inflation rates and the limitation of Prop 46, Woodstock Public Schools will be facing the same devastating fate of grossly being underfunded. They could easily lose 12 positions in a K-8 school system. It would be devastating for them as it would be for us if we don't make change. Our tax dollars should have the ability to provide more than they do. They should hold more value than they do. Year after year, Board of Finance makes cuts to both the town and school budgets to fit what the board has determined to be proper or appropriate mill rate increase, not factoring or taking into account anything else, not factoring in inflation, contractual increases, facility upgrades, and special ed costs. These cuts have had direct effect on the services we can and cannot provide within our town and to our general population. Enough is enough. Underfunding our budgets that are being presented to you is undervaluing every townsperson you as a board member serve. You are not here to serve a particular population and purpose. You are here to serve the youngest citizen to the oldest citizen and everyone else in between. You are the Board of Finance and you have to know how to make this right. You have the know-how to make this right. Listen to our people who have spoken to you year after year, hence the Bill Murray reference, asking you to stop this madness of our town being underfunded year after year. Please send those budgets to referendum untouched and let the people of Thompson have their voices heard this year. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions and comments from the audience? Go ahead, and if you could please state your name and address.
Sally White, 308 East Thompson Road. I'd like to know if there are copies of the presentation that you gave to Amy. I didn't see them out front.
No, we did not make them, but I can certainly send them to you.
Thank you.
And it's going to be posted on the website as well.
All righty. I'd just like some clarification in terms of trying to understand parts of the school budget. The person that either you plan to hire or currently have, I'm not sure which it was, the circulation person. Could you explain a little bit more about what they actually do, and are there other library staff already?
So we have a full-time, we have a full-time librarian at Turtle Lot Memorial High School that services the high school. She not only manages the library, but she also teaches some courses. We do not have librarians in the elementary school or the middle school. So years ago, we eliminated that position because of cuts, and during COVID, obviously, books weren't circulating, but we needed to have someone in the library to circulate the books, and so she does so at both the elementary school and at the middle school. So she's spread pretty thin, but her primary goal is for book circulation and book shelving and book ordering.
So the students don't go to the library and take the books out?
They do.
Oh.
That's part of the circulation process. They do go to the library and take the books out.
Okay. Thank you. And the Pupil Services Director, is that a position that was created, or is it mandated, or is it optional?
The special ed director?
No, there was a Pupil Services Director that was, I didn't see that under special ed. It was early on in your presentation.
Oh, you mean the student behavior coordinator?
Well, it was, I don't have the slide number or the page number, unfortunately, but I read it as Pupil Services Director, but maybe
Yes.
it's the same position?
No.
Oh.
The pupil service director is the special education director.
Oh, it is?
Oh, yes, and that position is
Okay.
vital. He's responsible for
I wasn't familiar with that
the Bradley
title.
program and the transition program, and managing almost well over 200 students with special education plans.
And one other thing was the math intervention staff person in the middle school. So that would suggest that there's a problem in the elementary school, that when they leave the elementary, I guess it's the first 3 grades, and go into the middle school, they're not prepared to do the middle school math, even though they've had math in the lower.
So it's a basic systemic problem. We are working on, and our scores are improving at the elementary, but what's happening at the middle school in grades 5 through 8 is that we have, because of COVID, and we can blame COVID on some of that, but the gap has widened, and so more students need direct intervention. And so the teachers do what they can during class time. They also stay after school to help students, but having that extra position will help us. We're trailing state average in mathematics scores, and the bulk of our students that are tested are at the middle school.
And you mentioned that 1/3 of the staff are actually residents of Thompson. So does that suggest you've got around 216 total staff in the school?
So that includes all of our staff, from our certified staff right down to our custodial cafeteria staff. That includes everyone. So out of a bit over 200 employees, 72 actually live in town. And, you know, even more than that were Turtle Rock graduates, but we didn't capture that number.
And one last question, if you would please. Would you kindly share then the per pupil costs in each of the 3 schools?
I don't have that off the top of my head, but we can certainly get that to you, Sally.
Okay. I know perhaps the Director of Finance might have that.
Do you know the 21?
Okay. Thank you very much.
Any other questions or comments from the audience? Go ahead. If you can state your name and address up to the microphone, please.
Jessica Bolte, 1081 Riverside Drive. I have 2 children, Thompson Public Schools. I came through this district. My husband's come through this district. Both my siblings live in town. They have their children in this district. 4 years since at least my child's been in kindergarten. She's now a 6th grader. I've been standing in front of this board asking you to please fund the education. It protects my property values. It protects your property values. It protects all of their property values. Not only that, it makes those students want to come back here and make this town livable. We left here in 2001. After we graduated, we weren't coming back. We went as far south on the eastern coast as you could possibly get. Thompson has something in the water, something in the land here. You want to come back. It makes you want to come back, and it makes you want to participate. And that's why we ended up coming back. We wanted to raise our children in the same location where we were, so they had the same opportunities. When I went through Thompson, I had the opportunity to take 2 languages. We're down to 1. I had the opportunity to play a multitude of sports. We're limited on that option now, too. I had the opportunity and was able to take college prep courses. We're finally bringing that back. When we were in elementary school, we had a gifted and talented program. That's gone. At what point do you stand there and you look at the over $3 million that have been cut out of proposed budgets, and you can be cute and say, well, you still got a raise. The fact of the matter is you are leaving the most vulnerable of your community out, and it needs to stop. And the same goes for our town and public works department. I'm tired of driving on roads that eat up my car. I'm tired of running on broken sidewalks where I roll my ankles. It's time to put some pride into this town. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments from the audience? Questions or comments from the audience? Go ahead.
Danielle Carlson, 3 Rachel Drive, North Grosvenor-Dale. Bill, $21,000 per pupil. That is including the cost of the full budget, including special ed costs, because I just don't want everybody to think that that is what we're spending accurately on each student. I just want to get that information out there. Yes.
Any other questions or comments from the audience? Going once, going twice. Okay. The next item on the agenda would be to adjourn, so before we go there, this is your last opportunity if anyone has any questions or comments while we're still on this item on the agenda. Okay. Hearing none, does someone want to make a motion to adjourn? So Rob Mann has a motion to adjourn. Rob Wurge has seconded that motion. All in favor of adjourning signify by saying aye. I'll also vote yes, so that's 6 votes yes, no votes, 0 votes. Anyone opposed? Anyone abstain? Okay, so that's 6-0. It is 8:04 PM, and this budget presentation public hearing is now adjourned. Thank you, everyone. The Board of Finance will hold budget workshops every Thursday, 7 PM, in the Town Hall in the Merrill Sine Room. That's every Thursday, 7 PM, Town Hall, Merrill Sine Room. In April, if we feel the need, we may also meet on Tuesdays at 7 PM, same location. But all you have to do is check the town website, and you'll see if we decide to meet twice a week. But at minimum, we will meet every Thursday, 7 PM. Thank you.